How has it already been another month? March is over, April is here, and that means it's time to talk about some video games. I didn't plan it this way, but I ran into an interesting trend with the games I played this month. I started with Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince. This is kind of a Pokemon game set in the Dragon Quest universe. I always like more established RPGs. Do this kind of one-off game that explores a different genre. I really enjoyed World of Final Fantasy. I really liked how it brought traditional RPG elements into the monster-catching genre. And at the beginning, it seemed like Dragon Quest Monsters was going to do something similar. Every monster has a number of skills that it can learn down 3 different skill trees, and there's a ton of variety in the monsters. But very quickly, as you go into it, you realize that you are supposed to be essentially merging monsters together. Once a monster hits level 10, you can combine it with another level 10 or above monster, and then you get a new monster that's level 1. The problem is, it feels kind of like a hodgepodge. You can even sometimes get the same as one of the 2 monsters that you're using. It just didn't feel like there was any clear progression. Pokemon has evolutions, Digimon has a clear evolution or de-evolution tree. This game, it just kind of felt random. Add to that the fact that the game is pretty basic and generic. The game sends you to an area, you have to explore it, getting to the end of a dungeon to fight the big strong boss monster, rinse and repeat. The areas are not very big, but they are at least unique in how they look. But nothing about it really stood out. There is no real story. You're not really working towards a goal. It felt very padded. Why did we have to go through so many areas when we could have just gone through 1 or 2? It was hard to stay motivated when playing this game. Add to that the fact that combat is essentially an auto-battler. You can manually set the attacks for each of your enemies, but there's really no point, except for maybe the boss fights. You bring 4 monsters into battle and you can give them general behavior settings, so you can essentially set that for your party and they will mostly take care of themselves. Very rarely did I feel like I needed to jump in and manually control my monsters. I can see why this game would be appealing, why people might like it, but for me, it just felt like, what am I even doing? It felt like it was playing itself, like I wasn't really working towards anything, and it just didn't really resonate with me. And so it's one that I actually didn't finish. I didn't really feel the urge to keep playing it. Perfect timing, though, because when I did that, the re-release of Suikoden 1 and 2 came out. Now, these are games that I've heard a ton about, but I've never played, and so I thought, what a perfect opportunity to give these games a shot. And imagine my surprise when it turns out these are essentially Pokemon games, and it's also essentially an auto-battler. I've been going through the first game so far. I can definitely see why it's a beloved series. The Pokemon element kind of comes in about a third of the way through the game. You go from being a little ragtag group to this army, essentially. And so you need to recruit people. And so there's a ton of characters that you've encountered as you've gone on your journey that you can then start recruiting. The more people you recruit, the stronger your army is, and you can bring any of those recruits with you in your party of 6 characters. That too is a little overwhelming. I didn't really find I was using too many different members in my party. I pretty much found the 6 that I liked and stuck with them, but it's still a cool idea. But again, combat is essentially an auto-battler. You can set your guys to auto-attack. Magic is very limited. You only get a few casts per person. It's not something you normally want to be wasting on random encounter battles. The auto-attack setting I didn't find was that great. None of my party members would seem to focus on a single enemy and instead attack all of the enemies, which ultimately usually had me taking more damage, but at the same time, it was easier than manually setting 6 attacks to 1 monster, and so I usually just let it run. I was surprised considering this is a remaster. I know they did some quality of life improvements, but there is still so much to this game that is old school, outdated game design. The menu traversal is horrific. Every party member has their own inventory, and trying to transfer things between party members or equip new items is just tedious. There's no easy, good way to do it, and it just got so frustrating. They do at least now give you a key items category, but I felt like they could have done a lot more in the quality of life department to make this game a little more playable in modern times. That said, it looks great, crisp visuals, really nice art, The story's pretty interesting, and the game is pretty cool for what it is, especially considering the time it originally came out. I'm excited to continue going through them, but they got dethroned for my attention thanks to the third Auto Battler game that I picked up this month, which is Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition. This is a game I've been super excited for. I love the Xenoblade series. I never had a Wii U, and I've been hoping that they would port it to the Switch for a while now. With not much time left to spare, considering the Switch 2 is coming out, we finally got the game. So far, so good. The game is definitely a Xenoblade game. It's got the feel of it as far as the combat goes, as far as the world design goes and the monsters. But it's also got a nice kind of futuristic setting, which does feel different enough that it, at the same time, doesn't feel like a Xenoblade game. It's a pretty interesting take on the series, and I know it's not meant to necessarily tie into the trilogy of games. And it's also not one with much story. That's the common complaint you hear about it, and I'm feeling that so far. I'm still fairly early on into the game, but already I can see the lack of a narrative and the overabundance of side quests that don't really feel like they have much impact starting to drag on me. And I haven't even gotten my Skell yet, which everybody says is when the game really opens up and becomes a 10 out of 10. So I'm reserving judgment, but I'm just glad that I can finally have the chance to experience this game and play through it. But that's not all the games I played this month. March also happens to have Mario Day in it, where Nintendo sells games for reasonable prices for once. So I picked up 2 games during the sale, Princess Peach Showtime and Donkey Kong vs. Mario, the remake of the Game Boy Advance game. Both of these games are really honestly huge disappointments. And even paying $30 for each of them on sale, I feel a little ripped off. Mario vs. Donkey Kong is an interesting little idea. It takes the original arcade Donkey Kong game and sort of turns it into a more puzzle game, but has that same feel. You're kind of climbing around little platforms with ladders, there's some enemies for you to avoid, and some puzzles for you to do. But the puzzles are all so easy, they're just mind-numbingly easy. Even towards the end, they give you some expert levels, and it's nothing crazy. It was just too easy. Breeze through it. The game is incredibly short. There's only 8 worlds. Each world has 7 or 8 levels. They do make you go through the worlds twice. They have like an alternate version of each of the worlds as you go through. But even with that, the levels take like 2 minutes, maybe 5 tops. You're not really failing the levels very often. It's pretty clear what you have to do, pretty clear how you have to do it. And so the game is really a breeze. If you want, they try and pad out the game experience by having a time trial mode, but I don't need time trials in this kind of puzzle game. If that appeals to you, then I'm sure that adds a lot of replayability, trying to redo the levels over and over, but I do not like redoing levels. So Mario vs. Donkey Kong, I can at least kind of understand. It was a Game Boy Advance game. They remade it for the Switch. Visually, at least, it looks very nice, and since it's a remake, you do kind of expect a little less since it's a remake of a Game Boy Advance game. Princess Peach, on the other hand, they have no excuse as far as I'm concerned. This is a game starring Princess Peach. It's an interesting idea. She's at this huge theater and it gets taken over, and so she has to go through the different plays, and as she does, she gets different costumes, but it feels so uninspired and not fleshed out. There's a wide range of costumes for Peach to use, and they all have relatively different abilities, but it's just one single ability, and then that ability becomes the gimmick for the level. When you're the cowboy, you're lassoing people. When you're the kung fu master, you are punching and kicking people. When you're the detective, you're looking for clues, things like that. Especially coming off of last year's Astrobot, which essentially did the same thing, where you had a lot of gimmicks that only showed up for 1 or 2 levels, but those felt so well realized and were so engaging and felt really impactful, compared to Princess Peach, which just feels so empty and lifeless. Add to that the fact the game barely can run on the Switch. There is some slowdown, the graphics are not that amazing, and it's just really surprising that they put this game out. I would have expected them to put a little more effort into it, and I hope this isn't a sign of things to come. We've seen a lot of negativity towards the Mario sports games, for example. I hope that when it comes to at least the big releases, the big Marios, the stuff that we're looking forward to on the Switch too, that it doesn't get this kind of treatment. And that was March. Those are the games I played. What games did you play this month? Let me know in the comments down below. What games are you looking forward to in April and beyond? If you liked the video, be sure to like the video, consider subscribing to the channel, maybe sharing the video, and I will see you all with the next video.